Tonight, new allegations in the fight against fraud in Minnesota. In a new 200-page report from federal lawmakers, it accuses Governor Walz's administration of not only failing to stop the fraud, but of retaliating against employees who tried to raise concerns. The report from the Republican-led House Oversight Committee stems from months of hearings and investigations. And now lawmakers are calling for closer scrutiny of every state social service program. Raya Katene joins us live to break down that report for us. Raya?
Well, Julie, this report claims that organizations suspected of fraud were still getting funding because some state officials were afraid of litigation or accusations of discrimination. The Department of Justice estimates that $9 billion were lost in fraud in Medicaid-related programs since 2018 here in Minnesota. This 200-page report by the U.S. House Oversight Committee claims Minnesota's top officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison, had the power to stop widespread fraud but failed to act. It also claims the Walz administration, quote, retaliated against employees who tried to raise concerns, going to great lengths to keep them quiet.
It's shocking and it's frustrating.
Republican State Representative Kristen Robbins, who chairs the state's Fraud Prevention and Oversight Committee, says the federal report confirms her committee's findings. But a spokesperson for Governor Walz called the Republican-led federal House committee a joke, saying they, quote, continue to rehash COVID-era fraud to distract from endless wars, gas prices, ICE, and the president's insider trading.
Some of the people that they had before the House Oversight Committee, we tried to interview. We called them to testify before our committee, but we didn't have subpoena power.
Robbins points to transcribed interviews within the report with 9 current and former Minnesota state officials that she says contradict previous public statements from state leaders about when they became aware of the fraud.
Those transcribed interviews are really important evidence in this case, and I was really glad to see that they published those.
Attorney General Ellison's press secretary writes, quote, Republicans in Congress issued a report riddled with inaccuracies and misrepresentations in an effort to politicize the issue of fraud instead of actually helping Minnesota protect tax dollars and go after fraudsters, adding that the Attorney General's office does not oversee state social services programs and that the report does not distinguish between the authorities of different government offices and agencies. And tonight, Vice President J.D. Vance says that he's actually referred the allegations within this report to the DOJ's Fraud Division for potential criminal investigations. Julie.
All right. And so, Raya, do we have any information on the people that Representative Robbins was referring to who her state committee did not get to interview? Do we know who they are or more about their testimony?
Yeah, these are people who previously worked for or are currently working for the state within the Human Services or the Education divisions. And what they were questioned about is mostly the timeline of events. What this committee's trying to find out is if the governor and other state officials were able to know about the fraud, if they did know about the fraud sooner than they were letting on, and if there was anything that they could have done to prevent it. One of these officials that was questioned, whose interview is transcribed within this report, was asked to potentially just speculate on whether the governor would have had this information sooner than he'd let on, and he says if he had to potentially speculate, then yes, that likely was the case. Julie.
All right. Thank you, Raya.